Hello, Redeemer family. This is Pastor Ian Thormanson with you all, your associate pastor, and I'm just here to bring you January's Big Idea video. So what's the big idea? I'd like to share an update with you all on how our Growing Up RLC changes that we made this fall have been going. So all of that was laid out in a video a few months ago of all the different things that were going to be adjusted and changed for all of our 18 and under ministry. But really for our RLC kids, our RLC minis, so nursery age, RLC kids for that age, so birth through about 5th grade, the major thing that changed for them was a rebranding and a refocus on what exactly they are and what their purpose is. And so there's not much to report besides that adjustment of rebranding has been effective. Beyond that, RLC kids and RLC minis have just been continuing to do what they have been doing. Lindsay has been doing an absolutely fantastic job running all of that. Those kids are continuing to be told more and more about Jesus and his love for them, and interact with the reality that Jesus loves them, experience it in all the things. And so things are going really, really well in that regard, but not a ton of changes necessarily that we made, and so not much to report besides the reality that things are continuing to go super well. Now, in the Growing Up RLC middle school and high school RLC students section of things, we did make some incredibly major changes this fall, and all of that again was laid out in a previous video, which will be linked here in this email as well, so you can go ahead and go back and take a peek at all of that to refresh yourself on the changes that were made. And so how are things going? That's this video. So now it's about halfway through the year. We've had a few months of these changes, and I want to report 3 things that I have found happening because of these changes, and then we'll get into a few of the numbers as well. So 3 things that I want to report. Number 1, relationships are being formed. By that I mean friendships are being formed among these students. They are beginning to, more quickly than we've seen in the past, build relationships with one another, build friendships with one another, so that they want to come to church because their friend is at church. They want to come to church so they can see their friends, so they can interact with their friends. And we're seeing this both right within students and with one another, but also adults. Our small group leaders for our Tuesday night middle school, high school stuff that's going on are getting to know these kids as well, and there's mentor-mentee type of relationships that are forming in that as well. And so we're seeing this happen much quicker than we've seen in the past because of a new emphasis on building relationships, friendships, etc., etc. And so that has certainly happened, and it's been obvious and really, really cool to watch. And so first thing I noticed is relationships are being formed here at Redeemer among students, and even with students and their adult leaders. Secondly, the teaching of the various things that we teach, and particularly confirmation topics, is much more effective. This fall, we went through the 10 Commandments in the month of October, and things were focused more on best practices in education and doing things that are best practices in education, group work, projects, things like that. And it's really cool to see how much more effective that teaching was. The kids were engaged, they were asking good questions, they were wanting to learn. It was an absolutely incredible time of teaching the 10 Commandments to these students. And so teaching is more effective. We've seen that in the 10 Commandments. And then also just with our regular youth group Bible studies as well. The students are learning, asking good questions, and engaging more with the teaching than they have in the past. And then finally, third thing I've noticed is these students are making their faith their own and starting to put that into practice. We're seeing this in high school, but we're definitely seeing this in middle school as well. And so they are making their faith their own in some incredible ways. Part of the confirmation pathway requirements that were changed was having to do sermon notes. And so these students that are part of the confirmation pathway are doing some sermon notes where they listen to the sermon and just fill out a form about the sermon. And reading through those, you can just tell that these students are starting to really engage with it and starting to take home what they're learning from the sermons and other things. And so through sermon notes and various projects that they do through Ten Commandments, or through the Ten Commandment class or other classes, other youth group things, it's obvious how these students are really starting to seriously consider, how does this actually affect my life? How does my faith, how does the reality that I trust in Jesus and that I follow Jesus, how does that actually affect my life today as a student, today, as a sibling, today as a child, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just incredible to watch and see examples, especially in their filling out these sermon notes, how these students that are part of the confirmation pathway, but also high school and other middle schoolers, are truly making their faith, or beginning to make their faith their own and to own it as theirs. And so those are 3 things I've noticed come out of the changes and adjustments that we have made to growing up RLC as a whole, right? 18 and under ministry, and in particularly RLC students, middle school and high school. And so another piece of this, of course, is the quantitative part of it, where we're measuring how many students are coming and wanting to have a particular average. And really the ultimate goal is to engage every student that is eligible on our books and eligible, if you will, for student ministry, right? Of course, we'd love to engage students from the community as well, and we'd love for them to be part of our student ministry, our RLC students as well. But the main focus is let's get all of the kids that are members, students that are members of Redeemer, engaged in ministry, engaged in student ministry at Redeemer. So that's the ultimate hope and goal, and and so that's where we're moving. We're not there yet. We're not quite there yet, but there are definitely some promising things that have been happening. And I think as a result, at least in part, with the adjustments and changes we've made over the last number of months. Right now, over all the different middle school events that we have, so this is Sunday morning Sunday school. This is Tuesday night youth group, middle school youth group stuff. This is confirmation activities, 10 Commandments, that kind of thing. This is a second Sunday fellowship opportunities, these kinds of things. Over all of this stuff, we are averaging 16 middle schoolers per event. In high school, over all of their events, we are averaging about 5 to 10 high schoolers right now for Tuesday night youth group, other fellowship things that they do. Okay, so it's a start, not quite where we want to be. Of course, want to continue to engage and grow these programs to be able to connect with all of the students so they can all continue to make their faith their own. But we're making a start. Things have begun, and that's where things are at right now. However, a really important point to note, and one other number, is that our middle schoolers that are engaged in the confirmation pathway can engage with fellowship events kind of with flexibility and however it works for their schedule. And so general fellowship, they need to go to a few, but they can do that in their own kind of way. And so those numbers are kind of expected to be a little lower. However, for our confirmation specific classes like the 10 Commandments, which I mentioned just a few moments ago that we taught in October, those things we need to have a higher attendance. Those would be required, if you will, right? We want the students to go to these classes to check off the 10 Commandments, or they need to go to all of them to check off the 10 Commandment box, if you will, on their confirmation pathway. And so for the 10 Commandments class in particular, those 5 classes, we averaged 23 students. 23 students were at those, which is still about 5 to 10-ish short of eligible confirmation students, if you will. I'm really, really thrilled with that 23 student average for our 10 Commandment class. In other words, students are grabbing onto this more flexibility, but also more accountability focus of confirmation, RLC students in the confirmation pathway within that in particular. And so it's really cool to see them being flexible in general fellowship events, but really engaging in the things that they need to engage in, that we want them to engage in, and they need to be at every single week in order to take that step in the confirmation pathway. Lots of things going on in youth ministry and RLC students within growing up RLC. Many exciting things. These adjustments, these changes that we've made, I really strongly believe have been effective thus far, and I'm excited to continue to roll out things over the spring and see how God continues to work in and through this to, in particularly help these students build friendships and relationships with one another so that they want to go to church because they get to see their friends. And then in engaging in church, of course, they're going to engage with their most important friend, with their best friend, if you will, and that is Jesus. And so the emphasis and goal of building relationships, of having fun at church, in order to then be able to engage them with the gospel and the good news of Jesus, is already working in wonderful, wonderful ways. And so super excited to see how this continues to go. I'm thrilled with where we're at right now. Definitely still have work to do, and we're going to keep working to continue to engage these students with the gospel of Jesus Christ, to continue to build the kingdom of God. Thank you for your support, Redeemer. We appreciate it and cannot wait to continue to share the good news of Jesus with the students of Redeemer Lutheran Church through Growing Up RLC and RLC students.